The chamber stretched upward like a cathedral built by gods who had forgotten humility. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by rising tiers of seats that climbed toward a domed ceiling lost in shadow. 2,000 alien representatives filled those seats, their collective presence creating a wall of hostility, so thick it felt like walking through water. Marcus kept his hands clasped behind his back, his posture relaxed despite the weight of every eye in the galaxy watching him. Above, the Supreme Arbiter's podium jutted out like the prow of a ship, and upon it sat High Chancellor Vrex of the Kellian Dominion. The being was massive, easily 3 times human height, with armored plates that shifted colors to reflect emotion. Right now, those plates burned an angry crimson. Human, Rex's voice boomed through translation nodes embedded in every seat. You stand accused of the massacre at Prion Station. 7,000 Kellian citizens dead, their station reduced to debris. Your warships were seen departing the system immediately after the attack. Explain yourself before this council strips your pathetic species of every colony, every ship, every right to exist beyond your insignificant blue world. The gallery erupted. Delegates from hundreds of species began shouting demands for immediate justice. Some called for humanity's complete removal from council space. Others suggested harsher measures. Marcus noticed a few species staying silent, their representatives watching with what might have been curiosity rather than rage. Holographic projectors activated around the platform, displaying evidence in brutal detail. The station burning, bodies floating in the void. Human warships, clearly marked with Earth's insignia, accelerating away from the destruction. The timestamps, the trajectory data, the communication logs, all of it painted an undeniable picture of human guilt. Marcus waited for the chaos to settle. He didn't try to speak over it, didn't show any sign of panic or desperation. He simply stood there, hands behind his back, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That smile seemed to infuriate Rex even more. The High Chancellor slammed a massive appendage against the podium controls, triggering a sound dampener that silenced the entire chamber. You dare smile? Vrex demanded. Your species faces extinction, and you smile? I smile, Marcus said quietly, his voice somehow carrying to every corner of the vast space. Because you've made this remarkably easy for me. The confusion that rippled through the chamber was almost visible. Representatives leaned toward one another, their translators working overtime to parse what the human could possibly mean. I came here prepared to explain, Marcus continued, to defend humanity's actions through careful argument and diplomatic maneuvering. But then you opened with evidence, High Chancellor. You gave me exactly what I needed. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Tell me, did you personally oversee the preparation of these holographic displays? Vrex's plates flickered between crimson and a darker purple. The evidence speaks for itself. Your guilt is absolute. Then you won't mind if I add some context to your evidence. Marcus touched the console on his wrist. This is Ambassador Webb. Execute protocol revelation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every holographic projector in the chamber flickered. The images of destruction remained, but now new data streams appeared alongside them. Communication intercepts, financial records, military deployment orders, all of it carrying Kellian government authentication codes. Marcus watched. Vrex's plates cycle rapidly through colors as the High Chancellor realized what was happening. The new data told a very different story than the burning station. It showed Kellian military commanders discussing the creation of a false flag operation. It revealed payments to mercenary groups to stage the attack using captured human vessels. It documented a decade-long plan to manufacture a crisis that would justify Kellian annexation of human colony worlds. But the data went deeper still. As the gallery watched in growing horror, the displays began showing similar operations. 17 other species over the past century. 17 civilizations that had been framed, destroyed. Their worlds absorbed into Kellian territory with the Council's implicit blessing. The chamber descended into chaos again. But this time, the anger wasn't directed at the human standing calmly at the center platform. Delegates turned on one another, on the Kellian representatives, on the Council leadership itself. Accusations flew in hundreds of languages. Marcus let it build for exactly 30 seconds. Then he spoke again, and once more his voice cut through the noise with unnatural clarity. You thought us weak because we're young. Because our territory spans barely a dozen worlds, while yours encompasses thousands. Because we came to you seeking membership in your galactic community with smiles and open hands. He turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. That was your first mistake. Vrex's appendage moved toward the security alarm, but froze halfway there. New data had appeared on the displays. Positions of human vessels throughout Council space. Not the few hundred ships that Earth's public registry claimed. Thousands of contacts, all decloaking simultaneously across dozens of systems. And every single one was broadcasting the same message. Targeting solution acquired. The mathematical precision of it was beautiful in a terrible way. Every Kellian military installation had multiple human vessels positioned in strike range. Every Council enforcement station. Every major government center. The coverage was so complete, it could only have been planned over years. Maybe decades. Your second mistake, Marcus said into the stunned silence, was assuming we came to this chamber to defend ourselves. He walked forward, stopping at the edge of his platform. The movement was casual, unhurried, as if he were taking a stroll through a garden, rather than standing before the most powerful governing body in the known galaxy. We didn't come here to plead innocence. We came to deliver a declaration of war, and to offer you one single chance to avoid learning what humanity has really been building for the past 50 years, while you thought us harmless. Vrex found his voice, though it came out strained. You cannot possibly believe you can threaten this council. Your fleet counts are lies. Sensor ghosts. Deception. Are they? Marcus gestured to the displays. Your own military analysts are confirming the contacts right now. I can see their reports coming through on your private channels. High Chancellor. They're telling you the signatures are genuine. The power outputs are real. The targeting solutions are active and locked. He paused, letting that sink in throughout the chamber. 2,000 species trying to process the impossible data before them. Trying to understand how a young race that had seemed so eager to join their galactic community could have infiltrated their space so completely. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. Those ships you're detecting? They're just the ones we wanted you to see. The ones broadcasting their positions openly. The real question you should be asking is, how many more are there that we're still hiding? The displays shifted again, showing new calculations. Projected fleet strengths based on industrial capacity, resource consumption, construction timelines. The numbers were staggering. If humanity had been building in secret for 50 years, using technology and methods a council knew nothing about, the visible fleet could be just a fraction of their actual military strength. Marcus touched his console again. A countdown appeared on every display. 60 minutes. You have 1 hour, he said. 1 hour to decide whether you want to see what happens when humanity stops smiling and starts showing teeth. 1 hour to choose between negotiation and demonstration. Vrex leaned forward on the podium, his massive form radiating fury. You speak of demonstrations? Of threats? You stand alone in this chamber, human. 1 word from me and you'll never leave this station alive. Marcus's smile widened. Go ahead. Give the word. I'd love to show you what happens when you try. The High Chancellor's appendage hovered over the control panel. Every being in the chamber held their breath, waiting to see if he would trigger the station's defense systems, call in security forces, attempt to end this confrontation with overwhelming force. But Vrex hesitated, because the data was still streaming across the displays, because his military advisors were screaming warnings through private channels, because for the first time in his long career of crushing lesser species, he was facing an opponent who seemed genuinely unconcerned about the power arrayed against them. "Well?" Marcus asked. "What's it going to be, High Chancellor? Do you want to see part 2 of what humanity is prepared? Or shall we discuss the terms of your surrender?" The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Surrender. Not negotiation, not compromise. Surrender. As if humanity held all the power in this equation. As if the species that had arrived begging for council membership just 50 years ago was now in a position to dictate terms to an organization that had controlled a galaxy for millennia. The countdown continued ticking down. 58 minutes remaining. Marcus stood perfectly still, hands behind his back, that infuriating smile never wavering. Around him, 2,000 species began to realize they might have made a catastrophic miscalculation about these humans and their intentions. And in the depths of space surrounding the council station, thousands of human vessels waited in silence, their weapon systems armed and ready, their crews watching to see if the galaxy's old guard would choose wisdom or pride. The first 5 minutes of humanity's war had begun, and already the council was learning an uncomfortable truth. They had thought the humans weak. They had been wrong. 3 months before Marcus Webb stood in the judgment chamber, Colonel Rita Owens sat in a conference room buried 3 kilometers beneath Geneva. The walls were lined with quantum-encrypted displays showing real-time intelligence from across council space. 12 people occupied the room with her. The Shadow Council that actually directed humanity's interstellar policy, while the public government served as an elaborate distraction. "The Kellyan timeline is accelerating," Rita said, pulling up the latest intercepts. "Our assets inside their military command confirm they're planning the Prion Station operation within 6 weeks. They've already positioned the mercenary teams, acquired the captured human vessels they'll use for the attack, and drafted the evidence packages they'll present to the Council." Dr. Eli Romanuyan, humanity's chief xenopsychologist, studied the data with cold analytical precision. "Then we need to accelerate our response. The question is, what face do we show them? If we come in with obvious strength, they'll see the trap. If we appear too weak, they might move against Earth directly, instead of bothering with the false flag." "We show them Marcus Webb," said Director James Harlow from Intelligence. "He's perfect for this. 15 years deep undercover in the diplomatic corps, cultivated a reputation as soft on alien interests, known for seeking compromise over confrontation. The Kellyans will see exactly what they expect to see, a desperate junior ambassador sent because we have no strong position." Rita pulled up Marcus's file. His cover identity was impeccable. Published papers on cross-species cooperation. A voting record in diplomatic circles that consistently favored council positions over human interests. Multiple aliens on record calling him their favorite human negotiator because he was so reasonable, so willing to bend. None of them knew that every compromise, every concession, every seemingly weak position had been carefully calculated to build exactly that reputation. Marcus Webb was humanity's greatest intelligence asset precisely because everyone underestimated him. "The Kellyans aren't our real target," Rita said. "They're a symptom. The Council itself is the disease. A corrupt system that's been eliminating inconvenient species for over a century, always with the same playbook. Manufacture a crisis, present false evidence, rally the member species, absorb the victim's territory. We've documented 17 clear cases in the past 100 years alone. So we put the entire system on trial, Eli said. Use the Kellyan plot as the opening, then reveal the pattern. Show the galaxy what their government really is. And if they reject the evidence? Asked Admiral Victoria Cross, commander of Earth's public fleet. If the Council chooses to side with the Kellyans, despite everything we show them? Rita smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Then we show them what we've really been building for 50 years. And they learn that humanity's greatest weapon was never going to be our ships. The plan had started decades ago, with the first human merchant vessels visiting alien ports. Those ships had carried more than trade goods. They'd carried humanity's best hackers, infiltration specialists, systems analysts, all disguised as linguists and cultural attaches. Every technology exchange, every joint scientific project, every peaceful interaction had been simultaneously genuine. Cooperation and intelligence gathering operation. Humanity had learned alien systems from the inside, not through theft or sabotage, but through partnership. They'd built relationships, earned trust, gained access to source codes and system architectures. And quietly, patiently, they'd built backdoors into everything. The Antaran tech markets that supplied most Council species with their communication systems. Humanity had owned the base protocols for 20 years. The quantum relay networks that connected thousands of worlds, running on encryption standards that human cryptographers had designed specifically to be breakable by Earth's quantum computers. The navigation systems, the power grids, the defense networks, all of it built on foundations that humanity could access whenever necessary. It's the most elaborate infiltration in galactic history, Eli observed. And the beautiful part is, we did it all through legitimate channels. We didn't hack systems. We designed them. We didn't steal access. We were given it. Every alien species thought they were getting cutting-edge human technology in fair trades. They never realized we kept keys to every lock. Rita pulled up another display, this one showing humanity's actual military strength. The public fleet numbered maybe 300 vessels, enough to defend Earth's handful of colonies, but nothing that could threaten Council space. The real fleet was 20 times that size, built in hidden shipyards throughout the outer solar system and in deep space construction facilities that had never appeared on any registry. But even those ships weren't the real deterrent. They were decoys meant to draw attention while humanity's actual weapons remained hidden. Gravity manipulation technology reverse engineered from ancient ruins discovered on Mars. Quantum entanglement systems that allowed instantaneous force projection across any distance. Singularity generators that could fold space itself. 50 years of scientific development. All of it hidden behind a facade of eager young species just trying to find their place in galactic civilization. The key is Marcus, Rita said. He needs to sell the weakness perfectly. Stand alone in that chamber, present the evidence, let them think he's our desperate last resort. And then, at exactly the right moment, pull the trigger on Revelation Protocol. She pulled up the simulation models. They'd run this scenario thousands of times, adjusting for every possible Council response. The Kellyans would deny everything initially. Some Council species would demand immediate human punishment. Others would waver, uncertain. The crucial moment would come when the evidence of the 17 previous genocides appeared. That would split the Council, create enough chaos for Marcus to deliver the real blow, the fleet decloak, the demonstration of human infiltration capabilities. The moment when 2,000 species realized they'd been compromised for decades without ever knowing it. What about the Kellyan response? Victoria asked. Our models predict a 37% chance they'll launch an immediate strike on Earth once they realize we've exposed their operation. Let them try, Rita said. We've been waiting for someone to give us an excuse to demonstrate what happens when humanity stops pretending to be harmless. The Kellyan attack fleet will provide the perfect object lesson. She pulled up schematics for the gravity displacement systems. Technology so advanced that most council species didn't even have theoretical frameworks to understand it. Weapons that could move entire fleets across the galaxy in an instant, or trap them in endless folds of twisted space, or simply relocate them to somewhere harmless and let them contemplate their mistakes. "We're not monsters," Eli said quietly. "That's the message we need to send. We have the power to destroy, but we choose mercy. We could eliminate our enemies, but we'd rather transform them into partners. The galaxy needs to see that humanity's strength comes with wisdom, not just weapons." Rita nodded. That's why Marcus smiles. Not from cruelty or arrogance, from confidence, from the knowledge that we've already won, and now we're just giving them a chance to surrender with dignity. The final pieces of the operation fell into place over the next 6 weeks. Intelligence teams confirmed the Kellyan mercenaries were in position. The captured human vessels had been prepped for the false flag attack. The evidence packages were ready for presentation to the Council, and humanity's countermeasures were equally prepared. Every communication channel monitored. Every Kellyan military transmission intercepted and decoded. Every step of their operation documented in real time by human intelligence. Assets they'd never detected. The night before Marcus departed for the Council station, Rita met with him privately in the secure briefing room. "You understand what's at stake," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. "We're not just defending humanity. We're trying to reform an entire galactic civilization." "No pressure. Can you sell the weakness?" "I've been selling it for 15 years, Marcus replied. "Every alien diplomat who's ever met me thinks I'm the friendliest, most accommodating human in space. They have no idea that every smile, every concession, every apparently naive question was building toward this moment. And if they choose violence? If the Council refuses reform and comes at us with everything they have?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Then they learn that humanity's kindness is a choice, not a weakness. And that we've spent 50 years building the capacity to defend that choice with overwhelming force." He boarded his shuttle, carrying nothing but a data chip and a carefully practiced smile. The chip contained evidence that would shatter the galactic political order. The smile was humanity's promise that even in the act of revolution, they would choose mercy over massacre whenever possible. As his ship departed Earth orbit, Rita watched from the command center deep beneath Geneva. Around her, the Shadow Council monitored the deployment of human assets throughout Council space. Thousands of ships moving into position. Intelligence teams preparing to activate Revelation Protocol. Military commanders running final checks on weapon systems the galaxy had never seen. "It's all coming together," Eli said quietly. 50 years of preparation. Decades of patience. And it all depends on one man standing alone in that chamber. Rita smiled. He won't be alone. He'll have the entire human species behind him. They just won't be visible until the moment we want them to be. The stage was set. The Kellyans would execute their false flag operation at Prion Station. The Council would summon humanity to answer for the massacre. Marcus Webb would stand in the judgment chamber, apparently defenseless, actually holding the power to reshape galactic civilization. And when he smiled at High Chancellor Vrex, when he calmly accepted the accusations and the threats, every being in that chamber would think they were watching a desperate species making its last stand. None of them would realize they were watching the old Galactic Order's funeral. The hour of deliberation transformed the Council chamber into a cauldron of barely controlled chaos. Delegates screamed at one another across the tiers. Ancient alliances fractured in real time as species that had stood together for centuries suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of an existential question. Do we negotiate with the humans, or do we crush them? Marcus Webb remained at the center platform, motionless as a statue. His console showed him the intelligence feeds streaming from Earth, the analysis of every conversation happening in the chamber's supposedly private communication channels. The Shadow Council had cracked those encryption systems years ago. Naturally, High Chancellor Vrex huddled with his senior advisors, their conversation growing increasingly desperate. Marcus couldn't hear them, but he didn't need to. The body language told the story. Vrex wanted to strike, wanted to call humanity's bluff, but his military commanders were showing him the projections, showing him what would happen if those thousands of human vessels were real and armed with weapons. Beyond Council understanding. At the 30-minute mark, Vrex made his move. He triggered the emergency military authorization. The command that should have summoned the Council's enforcement fleet to the chamber, should have locked down the station, should have ended this confrontation through overwhelming force. Nothing happened. Marcus watched Vrex's faceplates cycle through colors that probably indicated confusion, then panic. The High Chancellor tried the command again. And again. The enforcement fleet wasn't responding. Having technical difficulties? Marcus called up to the podium. His voice carried that same infuriating calm that had marked his entire performance. Let me save you some time, High Chancellor. The fleet isn't going to answer. Would you like to know why? Vrex's plates burned crimson again, rage overcoming panic. What have you done? About 3 minutes ago, every enforcement fleet commander received a data package. The same information their home populations are seeing right now. Evidence of the Kellian plot. Documentation of the 17 previous genocides. Proof that the council they serve has been corrupt for over a century. Marcus paused. Turns out even military officers have a breaking point when they realize they've been fighting for lies. The displays throughout the chamber shifted again, showing real-time communication intercepts from the enforcement fleets. Commanders refusing to mobilize. Entire squadrons standing down. Some units even broadcasting their support for the human reform proposals. But the real chaos was happening across council space itself. On Kellian Prime, the home world's population had received the evidence packages and taken to the streets. Protests erupted in the capital, millions of citizens demanding answers from their government. Similar demonstrations were spreading across Antaran worlds. Through the Helix Confederation, on dozens of member planets, humanity hadn't just infiltrated council systems. They'd infiltrated council communication networks. Every citizen access data hub, every public information terminal, every entertainment broadcast system had received the evidence simultaneously. There was no way to suppress it, no way to control the narrative. The truth was out there, spreading through populations, faster than governments could react. Marcus watched it unfold on his console with grim satisfaction. This was the real weapon. Not the ships, not the technology, not even the system infiltration. Information, pure, undeniable truth delivered directly to populations that had been fed lies for generations. You're destroying everything, Rex said, his voice carrying a note of genuine despair now. The stability we've maintained, the order, the peace across thousands of worlds. The stability of a prison, Marcus replied. The peace of a graveyard. Yes, we're destroying that. What gets built in its place will be up to all of you, but it will be built on truth instead of genocide. Ambassador Kelrus of the Antaran Coalition rose from her delegation seat. Her 6 eyes fixed on Vrex with an expression that Marcus's xenopsychology briefing translated as profound disgust. High Chancellor, she said. Her voice amplified across all channels. On behalf of the Antaran Coalition, I hereby withdraw our support for Kellian Dominion leadership in council affairs. Further, I move for immediate implementation of the human reform proposals as outlined in the Revelation Protocol documents. The chamber fell silent. For a species to publicly withdraw support from council leadership was unprecedented. The Antarans were one of the oldest, most established civilizations in the galaxy. Their word carried immense weight. Seconded, announced Ambassador Torval of the Cheruvian Free Colonies. I was there when the Council integrated the Meridian species 40 years ago. I watched their civilization burn because they wouldn't surrender mineral rights to Kellian interests. I've carried that shame ever since. If humanity can bring justice for the Meridians and the 16 other erased civilizations, then I support these reforms completely. One by one, other voices joined. Not many at first. Perhaps 30 species out of 2,000. But they were the right species. Old civilizations with influence. Trading powers with economic leverage. Military forces that, while individually small, collectively represented a significant portion of Council defensive capability. The dam had broken. The monolithic Council authority that had seemed unshakable was fracturing into factions. Before Marcus's eyes dotted the 45-minute mark, Rex played his final card. Even if some species choose to abandon their oaths, the majority still stands with established Council authority. And while your intelligence operations are impressive, human, you cannot possibly believe will surrender based on tricks and propaganda. You're right, Marcus said. Tricks and propaganda aren't enough. That's why I brought demonstrations. He touched his console. Throughout Council space, human vessels began executing precisely coordinated maneuvers. Not attacks. Something far more unsettling. On Kellian Prime, the government district's power grid shut down. Not a failure. A controlled shutdown that left life support and essential services running, but darkened every military installation, every propaganda broadcast center, every government complex. The lights went out with such precision, it could only be deliberate. On Antron hub stations, traffic control systems rerouted shipping lanes in complex patterns that spelled out messages in a dozen languages. Under temporary human administration, all services continue normally. Cooperation ensures smooth transition. Across the Helix Confederation's nomadic fleet networks, communication relays began broadcasting synchronized messages from human sources, demonstrating that humanity could access even the most decentralized, independent systems in Council spaced out, but the most disturbing demonstration happened in the Council chamber itself. Every delegate's personal console, supposedly isolated and secure, displayed the same message simultaneously. We see you. We've always seen you. Choose wisely. The implications crashed through the assembly like a shockwave. If humans could access personal diplomatic consoles, what else could they reach? Life support? Navigation systems? Weapons controls? You're inside everything, Kelrus said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. Every system, every network, every piece of technology in Council space. You've been there all along. Since the beginning, Marcus confirmed. The first human merchant ship that visited Antron space 60 years ago carried our best systems analysts. The technology exchange programs, the joint research projects, the peaceful trade agreements, all of it was real cooperation. But it was also intelligence gathering. We learned your systems by helping you build them. We understood your networks because we designed the protocols you use. Every handshake was genuine and simultaneously strategic. Frex's plates had gone dark, a color that Marcus's briefing suggested indicated defeated resignation. And if we refuse your demands? If the Council chooses to fight despite your infiltration? Marcus pulled up a new display. This one showed the real human fleet, the one that had been hiding in deep space beyond Council sensor range. Not thousands of ships, tens of thousands. Construction facilities that had been building vessels for decades in complete secrecy. Weapons platforms that incorporated technology the Council didn't even have theoretical frameworks to understand. Then you'll fight a war you cannot win against an enemy who controls your infrastructure, Marcus said simply. But here's the thing, High Chancellor. We don't want that war. We've spent 50 years building the capacity for it, specifically so we'd never have to use it. He let that statement hang in the air for a long moment. We're offering you a choice. Accept reforms. Help us build a legitimate galactic government based on transparency and justice. And humanity will share the technology that allowed our infiltration. We'll help you rebuild your systems with real security, real independence. We'll be partners instead of hidden puppeteers. And if we refuse, then we remain puppeteers. Your systems stay compromised. Your governments operate under constant human oversight. And every time one of you tries to eliminate another species the way the Kellians eliminated 17 others, we shut you down. Not violently, just quietly, efficiently, surgically. Your ships don't move. Your weapons don't fire. Your propaganda doesn't broadcast. You simply stop. The choice crystallized in that moment. Surrender sovereignty and gain partnership, or maintain the illusion of independence while living under permanent human supervision. At the 55-minute mark, the vote was called. It wasn't unanimous. 40% of species opposed the reforms, unwilling to accept that the galactic order they'd known for millennia was ending. 30% abstained, too frightened or uncertain to commit to either side, but 30% supported the human proposals. Enough to shatter the old consensus. Enough to prove that council authority no longer commanded automatic obedience. Marcus received the vote tallies on his console and nodded slowly. The reforms pass. A constitutional convention will convene in 6 months to draft a new galactic charter. All species invited to participate as equals. In the meantime, humanity will maintain oversight to ensure peaceful transition. He turned to leave the platform, then paused. Oh, and High Chancellor? The enforcement fleet commanders who refused. Your mobilization orders? We've granted them asylum if they want it. Any council military personnel who feel they can't serve under the old regime are welcome to join the Reform Coalition. We're not trying to destroy the council's defensive capabilities. Just redirect them toward actual defense instead of genocide. As Marcus walked toward the exit, Vrex called after him one final time. You knew we'd refuse the terms initially. You knew we'd try to call your bluff with military force. That's why you prepared the demonstration with the Kellian power grids. Marcus looked back over his shoulder. Actually, High Chancellor, that wasn't even the real demonstration. That was just proving we could access your systems. The real demonstration is about to begin, and you're going to want to see this. His console chirped. Rita's voice came through the private channel. We've got a problem. 200 Kellian loyalist warships just went dark. They're not responding to any commands, government or human. They're heading toward Earth at maximum speed. Marcus's smile returned, but it carried a different quality now. Almost sad. Then I suppose it's time to show them why humanity has been smiling this whole time. Execute homecoming protocol. The countdown on every display reset to 0 and began counting up. In orbit around Earth, the real human military was about to reveal the technology that would end any debate about humanity's position in galactic affairs. The demonstration wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Kellian Loyalist fleet numbered exactly 217 vessels, comprising the most advanced warships in their arsenal. Fleet Commander Dax led them personally, his flagship, broadcasting defiance on all channels as they accelerated toward Earth at speeds that pushed their engines beyond recommended safety parameters. Marcus watched the tactical display in the council chamber's side briefing room, where he'd retreated with the human delegation after the vote. The Kellian ships would reach Earth's outer defense perimeter in approximately 4 hours at their current velocity. Rita's voice came through the secure channel, calm despite the circumstances. All defensive platforms are online. The gravity displacement network is charged and ready. We can execute homecoming protocol on your order." "Not yet," Marcus replied. "Let them get closer. Let every sensor array in Council space track their approach. The galaxy needs to see this." In the main chamber, the session had devolved into shouting matches as species tried to process what the vote meant. Some delegates were already leaving, returning to their home worlds to report the unprecedented developments. Others clustered in groups, forming the early coalitions that would shape whatever government emerged from the Constitutional Convention. High Chancellor Vrex remained at his podium, isolated and diminished. His plates had settled into a dull gray that suggested exhaustion or despair. The Kellian Dominion's power was broken, but the Loyalist fleet represented one last chance to salvage something through force. Ambassador Kelris approached Marcus in the briefing room, her 6 eyes studying him with an intensity that might have been uncomfortable if he weren't used to alien scrutiny. "You planned for this," she said. "The Loyalist fleet's attack. You wanted them to try." "We prepared for every contingency," Marcus replied, "including the possibility that some species would choose violence over reform. But no, we didn't want this. We hoped it wouldn't be necessary. But you're not surprised." "No. 50 years studying council psychology taught us that power doesn't surrender gracefully. There would always be holdouts, always be those who'd rather fight than accept change." He pulled up another display showing the approaching Kellian vessels. The question was never whether someone would attack. It was how we'd respond when they did. Kelris watched the tactical plot for a long moment. "You're going to destroy them, aren't you? Make an example that ensures no one else tries the same thing." Marcus's expression shifted to something colder. "No, we're going to do something far more effective than destruction. We're going to demonstrate that violence is obsolete when your opponent controls space itself." At the 2-hour mark, fleet, Commander Dax broadcast a message to Earth on all frequencies. "Humans, you have attacked the Kellian Dominion through lies and infiltration. You have corrupted the Council with your propaganda. Now you will learn that real power comes from weapons, not tricks. Surrender your home world, or we reduce it to ash." The broadcast reached the council chamber, where the remaining delegates listened with varying expressions of concern. Some species seemed satisfied that the upstart humans were finally facing military consequences. Others looked worried about what would happen if Earth actually fell to Kellian attack. Marcus touched his console. "Fleet Commander Dax, this is Ambassador Marcus Webb. Turn back now. You don't want to reach Earth. You really, really don't want to reach Earth." The response came back, laced with contempt. "Your threats are meaningless, human. We're coming for your world, and your primitive defense platforms cannot stop us." "I'm not threatening you," Marcus said quietly. "I'm trying to save your lives. You have one final chance to stand down and avoid what happens next." Dax's laugh echoed through the transmission. "We're done listening to human lies. In 2 hours, your species learns the price of defying the Kellian Dominion." Marcus nodded slowly, as if he'd expected exactly that response. "Then remember I offered mercy. Remember I tried to warn you. And remember that what happens next is your choice, not mine." He switched channels to the secure military frequency. "Admiral Cross, they've made their decision. Execute homecoming protocol. Full demonstration parameters. I want every sensor array in council space watching this." In Earth orbit, Victoria Cross stood on the bridge of the flagship Determination, surrounded by the visible human fleet. But the visible ships were just theater. The real weapons platform floated in higher orbit, a construct of mathematics and force that bent space-time itself around its quantum cores. "Protocol homecoming is active," she announced. "Gravity displacement network online. Target fleet identified and locked. Initiating transfer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Throughout Council space, every active sensor array suddenly registered an impossible event. The Kellyan Loyalist fleet simply vanished from normal space. Not destroyed, not scattered, just gone, as if they'd never existed. For 3 seconds, absolute silence filled the council chamber as delegates tried to process what their sensor feeds were reporting. Then the feeds updated with the fleet's new position. They were in orbit around a barren moon at the galaxy's extreme edge, thousands of light years from Earth, completely unharmed, but utterly removed from any strategic position. How? Kelris breathed. That's not possible. You can't move entire fleets instantaneously across that distance. The energy requirements alone would require a star-sized power source. Marcus pulled up schematics on the main displays. 30 years ago, human archaeologists discovered ruins on Mars. Ancient technology from a civilization that existed millions of years before the Council. Most of it was degraded beyond recovery, but we found partial schematics for gravity manipulation systems. Took us 3 decades to understand the math, another 5 years to build a working prototype. The schematics showed technology that made Council scientists' understanding of physics look primitive. Not weapons that destroyed through force, but systems that manipulated the fundamental structure of spacetime itself. The ability to fold space, to move objects across any distance instantaneously, to trap vessels in endless loops of twisted geometry. You could have destroyed them, Breck said from his podium, his voice barely audible. With that technology, you could have annihilated the entire fleet in an instant. Yes, Marcus agreed. Every weapon system we've built over the past 50 years, the antimatter cascades, the quantum disruptors, the singularity bombs, we could have erased that fleet in microseconds. But we didn't become strong to prove we could kill. We became strong to prove we didn't have to. He let that sink in, watching comprehension spread through the chamber like ripples in water. That's why we're smiling, High Chancellor. Not because we won through violence. Because we won through mercy. Because humanity spent half a century building the most devastating military force in galactic history, then chose to use it for transportation instead of termination. The displays shifted again, showing detailed scans of the relocated Kellyan fleet. Every ship was intact. Life support fully functional. Communications equipment working perfectly. Enough supplies for the journey home, however long it took. Even entertainment systems were operational. Your loyalists are safe, Marcus continued. Confused, probably terrified, definitely contemplating their life choices, but safe. We even included navigation data for the return trip and maintenance schedules to keep their ships running during the voyage. No reason to be cruel about teaching a lesson. The implications crashed through the galactic consciousness like a tsunami. Humanity possessed technology that rendered traditional warfare obsolete. They could move entire fleets anywhere in the galaxy. They could strand enemies in empty space without harming them. They controlled the fundamental battlefield itself, and they were choosing kindness. This changes everything, Kelris said softly. If you can relocate ships at will, you can control all galactic commerce, all military movement. Every species becomes dependent on human approval for basic operations. Only if we choose to exercise that control, Marcus replied. Which brings us to the real choice facing the Council. You can work with us to build a government based on justice and transparency, and we'll share this technology. Help every species achieve the same capabilities. Or you can resist, and we maintain monopoly control over space-time manipulation while you live under our supervision. The chamber erupted again, but the tone had changed. This wasn't anger or defiance. It was desperate negotiation. Species trying to understand the terms, to find some path forward that preserved their dignity while acknowledging the new reality dot at the back of the chamber. A small group of delegates from younger civilizations watched with expressions that Marcus recognized as relief. These were species that had lived under council domination, that had feared becoming the next target for integration. To them, humanity's demonstration wasn't frightening. It was liberation. One of them, Ambassador Thane of the Rigel colonies, stood and addressed the chamber. I vote to accept the human reforms. All of them. Immediately. My people have lived in fear of Kellian expansion for 3 generations. If humanity's power can prevent another genocide, another false flag operation, another manufactured crisis, then I welcome their oversight. Others join Thane's declaration. The younger species, the vulnerable ones, the civilizations that had been waiting for someone to stand up to the Council's corrupt core. They flocked to humanity's banner, not from fear, but from hope. By the end of the session, the vote tallies had shifted dramatically. 60% now supported immediate reform implementation. The abstentions had largely moved to the support column once they saw the demonstration. Only the hardline Kellian loyalists and a few ancient civilizations too, proud to adapt, remained opposed. Marcus received the final counts and nodded. The reforms pass with substantial majority. Constitutional Convention begins in 6 months. Until then, humanity will provide security services to prevent any species from attempting what the Kellians just tried. Anyone who wants to test our capabilities is welcome to try. We have plenty of empty moons where they can contemplate their mistakes. As the chamber finally began to empty, Vrex descended from his podium for the first time. He approached Marcus directly, his massive form diminished by defeat. "You destroyed us without firing a shot," the former High Chancellor said. "The Kellian Dominion is broken. My government will fall within days. Everything we built is gone." "No," Marcus replied. "Everything you stole is being returned. Everything you built on genocide is being dismantled. But your species will survive. Your people will have a voice in the new government. You'll just have to earn influence through cooperation instead of taking it through force." Vrex's plates flickered through colors Marcus's briefing couldn't interpret. "And the Loyalist fleet will return home when they're ready. We didn't trap them. We just removed them from the battlefield. They can start back whenever they choose. The journey will take about 6 months at standard speeds. Long enough to think about whether violence was really worth it." The old Chancellor turned to leave, then paused. "Why mercy? You had the power to eliminate us completely. Why show compassion to enemies who would have destroyed you without hesitation?" Marcus smiled. The real smile this time, not the diplomatic mask. "Because that's what separates humanity from the old council. We don't believe in eliminating species that disagree with us. We believe in proving there's a better way. And we're patient enough to keep proving it until everyone understands." 6 months after the Judgment Chamber confrontation, the Constitutional Convention convened aboard Unity Station, a massive new structure built specifically to house the reformed galactic government. Representatives from over 1,800 species filled the assembly halls. Working through the exhausting process of building a legitimate democratic system from the ruins of the old council, Marcus Webb no longer attended as a lone ambassador. Earth's delegation numbered 50 specialists in law, governance, technology, and diplomacy. But Marcus remained its public face, the human who'd stared down the old order and smiled while reshaping galactic civilization. The convention sessions were chaotic, frustrating, and occasionally seemed on the verge of complete breakdown. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to find common ground. Ancient civilizations struggled to accept equal status with young upstarts. Every clause of the proposed constitution generated hours of debate, but progress happened. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. The first major achievement was the Transparency Accords, establishing that no galactic government could operate in secret. All military operations, all intelligence gathering, all diplomatic maneuvers had to be documented and made available to member populations. The old council's ability to manufacture crises in darkness was permanently eliminated. The second was the sovereignty guarantees, protecting species' rights to self-determination. No civilization could be forcibly integrated or eliminated without unanimous galactic consensus. A threshold deliberately set high enough to be functionally impossible. The third was the technology sharing mandates, requiring species with advanced capabilities to make those technologies available to the broader galactic community. Humanity led by example, releasing the gravity manipulation schematics and teaching alien scientists mathematics that made space-time fold-in possible. That last one generated enormous controversy. Some human voices argued that giving away their greatest advantage was strategic suicide. But Rita Owens stood before the convention and delivered a speech that became foundational to the new order. "We didn't build these weapons to dominate you," she said. "We built them to survive. Now that survival is assured through cooperation instead of force, holding on to monopoly power contradicts everything we claim to believe in. If we want a galaxy based on equality and justice, we have to actually practice equality and justice. That means sharing what we know." The speech was broadcast across human space, where it generated intense debate. Public opinion polls showed humanity divided roughly 50-50 on whether technology sharing was wise or reckless. But the Shadow Council held firm, and the schematics were released on schedule. Within months, other species began building their own gravity manipulation systems. Not as advanced as humanity's, not yet, but functional enough to prove the concept was universal. The galaxy was slowly equalizing, removing the power imbalance that had defined the old order. But not everyone accepted the changes peacefully. 3 months into the convention, a coalition of hardline Kellian, loyalists, and other disaffected species attempted a coordinated strike against Unity Station. 20 vessels, armed with weapons cobbled together from old military stockpiles, accelerated toward the station with clear hostile intent. Marcus was in a constitutional drafting session when the alarm sounded. He watched the tactical displays with the same calm expression he'd worn in the judgment chamber. "Should we evacuate?" asked Thane, his voice tight with concern. "No need," Marcus replied. "Watch." The human gravity displacement network activated. But this time, it wasn't humanity operating the controls. It was the Antaran Coalition using their newly constructed systems to relocate the hostile fleet to a predetermined safe zone. The attackers found themselves in orbit around a mining station at the edge of Antaran space, surrounded by security vessels, but completely unharmed. A message broadcast on all frequencies. Violence is not permitted. Return home and participate in the constitutional process, or remain here until you're ready to cooperate peacefully. The demonstration sent a clear signal. Humanity had shared their capabilities, and now other species could defend against violence just as effectively. The monopoly on force was broken. The ability to maintain peace through strength was becoming universal. "It's working," Kelrus said quietly, watching the relocated ships from the observation deck. "The new order is actually working. For now," Marcus replied. "The real test comes when we finish the Constitution and have to actually govern under it. Writing pretty words is easy. Living by them is harder." The Constitutional Convention stretched into its 6th month with no clear end in sight. Some species pushed for strong central authority to prevent chaos. Others demanded maximum autonomy to avoid recreating the old council's overreach. Humanity generally sided with the autonomy faction, having learned from Earth's own history that centralized power tended toward corruption. The compromise emerged slowly. A federal structure with strong protections for individual species' rights, but unified standards for things like commerce, communication, and military action. A multi-chamber legislature ensuring both species equality and population proportionality. An independent judiciary empowered to investigate and prosecute governmental abuse. And, controversially, a provision that humanity had insisted on, mandatory sunset clauses. Every law, every regulation, every governmental power would expire after 20 years unless actively renewed by the legislature. No eternal mandates, no permanent authorities, no institutional momentum that could recreate the old council's stagnation. You're building a government designed to constantly question itself, Vrex observed during one drafting session. The former High Chancellor had remained at the convention as a junior Kellyan delegate. His influence diminished, but his expertise still valued. Exactly, Marcus agreed. Power that can't be questioned becomes tyranny eventually. We're building a system that forces regular re-examination of every assumption. It'll be inefficient and frustrating, but it'll be harder to corrupt. On the 207th day of the convention, the constitutional draft was finally complete. It was an imperfect document, full of compromises and contradictions, with gaps that would require decades of judicial interpretation to resolve. But it was also the most democratic governmental charter in galactic history, built on principles of transparency, equality, and perpetual self-correction. The vote to ratify was scheduled for the following week, giving species time to review the final text and consult with their populations. During that week, Marcus returned to Earth for the first time since the Judgment Chamber confrontation. He stood in the Shadow Council's conference room beneath Geneva, looking at the same displays that had shown him the Kellyan plot 6 months ago. Rita, Eli, Victoria, and the others were all present, waiting to hear his assessment. Will it hold? Rita asked. The new constitution, the reformed government, all of it? Marcus considered the question carefully. For a while. Maybe a generation, maybe 2. Eventually, new corruptions will emerge. New power structures will try to game the system. We've bought time and established better principles, but we haven't solved the fundamental problem of power itself. Then what was the point? Victoria asked. The point, Marcus replied, was proving that change is possible, that entrenched power can be challenged. That young species with good ideas can reshape the galaxy if they're patient and strategic enough. We didn't create utopia, we created an opportunity. What the galaxy does with that opportunity is up to them. The ratification vote was broadcast across all inhabited space. Species after species approved the new constitution, not unanimously, but with substantial majorities. Even some of the holdout civilizations eventually agreed, recognizing that the alternative was isolation from the emerging galactic community. The final tally showed 82% approval. The new Federated Galactic Assembly was officially established, replacing the old council with a government built on democratic principles rather than ancient power structures. Marcus stood with the other delegates as the ceremony concluded. Around him, beings from thousands of worlds celebrated the achievement. Some with obvious joy, others with cautious optimism, a few with clear reluctance. But they were celebrating together, which was itself revolutionary. Ambassador Kelrus approached him as the formal proceedings ended. You're not staying for the inaugural assembly session? No, Marcus said. Humanity helped build the new government. Now we need to step back and let it function without us as central figures. If it can't work without human involvement, then we've just created a different kind of dependency. That's wise, Kelrus acknowledged, but also risky. There are still species that would undo these reforms if they could. Marcus smiled. That same calm, knowing smile that had infuriated Vrex and unnerved the old council. Let them try. The gravity displacement technology is spreading throughout the galaxy. The transparency accords mean they can't plot in secret. The sovereignty guarantees mean they can't manufacture genocides. And if they somehow manage to organize another attack, well, he gestured to the assembled species. It's not just humanity watching anymore. He departed Unity Station That evening aboard a small shuttle, leaving Earth's delegation to represent humanity in the new government. As the massive structure receded in the viewport, he allowed himself a moment of genuine satisfaction. The mission had succeeded beyond what they'd hoped. Not just survival for humanity, but fundamental reform for galactic civilization. Not just preventing one genocide, but establishing systems to prevent future ones. Not just building human power, but distributing that power widely enough to prevent any single species from dominating. 6 months later, Marcus was back in the conference room beneath Geneva when the report came through. A species on the galactic rim had attempted to restart the old council's practices, manufacturing a crisis to justify absorbing their neighbor's territory. They'd been stopped within hours, not by humanity, but by a coalition of nearby species using shared gravity displacement technology to relocate the aggressor's military, while independent investigators exposed the manufactured evidence. The new systems checks and balances had functioned exactly as designed. "It's really working," Eli said, reviewing the incident report. "The decentralized authority, the transparency requirements, the shared capabilities. The new government is actually policing itself. For now," Marcus cautioned. "But this is encouraging. It means the principles are taking root." Rita pulled up a long-term projection. "Our analysts estimate the current system will remain stable for approximately 40 to 60 years before major reforms are needed again. Corruption will creep back. Loopholes will be exploited. Power will concentrate in new ways. The cycle will continue." "Good," Marcus said. "A system that never needs reform is a system that stopped adapting." The point wasn't to create perfection. It was to create a government capable of reforming itself when corruption emerges. He stood at the window, looking up at the surface far above, at the sky beyond that, at the stars where humanity had once been a frightened young species, hoping to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Now they were a foundational civilization, not through conquest, but through vision. Not through domination, but through the patient work of building something better. "The next crisis will come," he said quietly. "Maybe in our lifetimes, maybe in our children's. Power will concentrate again. Corruption will emerge again. Another species will try to dominate again. But now the galaxy has proof that resistance is possible, that reform is achievable, that a young species with courage and intelligence can change the fundamental order." Rita joined him at the window. "And when that next crisis comes," Marcus smiled, the same smile he'd worn in the judgment chamber, the smile of someone who understands that the work of justice never ends, but that each generation can push the arc a little further. "When that next crisis comes, some new species will stand up and do what we did. They'll be patient. They'll be strategic. They'll build power quietly while appearing harmless. And when the moment comes, they'll smile and remind the galaxy that tyranny always falls eventually, because someone always has the courage to say no." He turned away from the window, back to the displays showing a galaxy slowly learning to govern itself with justice instead of force. "That's why we smile. Not because we won, because we proved winning is possible. And that's the most dangerous thing humanity ever could have taught them." Above Geneva, the stars shone bright and cold, indifferent to the struggles of the civilizations beneath them. But among those civilizations, something had shifted. The old order built on genocide and corruption was broken. The new order built on transparency and justice was taking root, and somewhere in that vast galaxy. Another young species was watching humanity's example and learning that power used wisely is stronger than power used violently. Learning that patience and strategy can overcome any obstacle. Learning to smile while they prepared to reshape their corner of civilization. The cycle would continue. Crisis and reform, tyranny and resistance, corruption and renewal. But each iteration pushed towards something better, something more just. Something closer to the ideals that humanity had been willing to fight for. And that, Marcus knew, was worth every smile. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.